You know, it's funny. Most of us walk around thinking we're pretty amazing judges of character, like 5 minutes with someone and bam, we've got them figured out.
Right. But if that was actually true, history would look totally different. We wouldn't have these incredible stories of deception.
Exactly. Think about Frank Abagnale Jr. I mean, the guy pretended to be a pilot, a lawyer, even a doctor, all before he was, what, 21?
Yeah, and pulled it off. His real skill wasn't like complex fraud techniques. It was social perception. He knew how to read people and project what they wanted to see.
Or on a completely different scale, you have the Volkswagen emissions thing, a huge company basically lying to everyone with software.
They played on our trust, our assumption that, a big brand like that is fundamentally telling the truth.
Which brings us to the big question, really. Why are we often so bad at seeing what's really going on beneath the surface?
That gap, the one between the public face someone shows and their actual motives. That's exactly what we're digging into today. This is our deep dive into social perception.
Basically how we gather information about people and then, try to make sense of it all.
Yep. And to tackle it, we're breaking it down into 3 main parts.
Okay. So first we'll look at the raw data, the nonverbal cues, all the stuff people communicate without words.
Then we'll move into how we process that data attribution. That's figuring out the why. Why do they act that way?
And finally, how we put it all together to form a picture of someone, impression formation. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan. Okay, so nonverbal communication first. What's really interesting here is how people try to hide stuff, right? Like if they're tired or annoyed, or maybe even feeling a bit hostile.
Yeah, they put on a brave face.
Exactly. But these internal states, the research calls them, relatively irrepressible. They tend to leak out unconsciously.
They kind of bypass our conscious filter, which is why nonverbals are often maybe a better clue to what someone's really feeling than what they're actually saying.
Totally. So our sources break these down into 5 main channels. First up, the obvious one, facial expressions.
Right. We've got the classic basic emotions, anger, fear, happiness, sadness, disgust, and maybe surprise.
Well, surprise is often in the list, but it gets tricky. Cross-culturally, it's often confused with fear.
Yeah.
Which leads to this whole debate about universality.
Ah, right. Like, is a smile recognized as happiness everywhere?
Happiness seems pretty universal, yeah.
Yeah.
But for other emotions, it's less clear-cut. And there's also this in-group advantage. We're usually a bit better at reading the emotions of people from our own culture or group. Makes sense, I guess.
Okay, what's channel number 2?
Eye contact. Generally, lots of eye contact signals liking, friendliness, interest.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
Big catch. Too much eye contact becomes staring. And staring is almost universally read as anger or hostility.
Yeah, that's why they say, like, in a road rage incident, actively avoid locking eyes for too long. It just escalates things.
Definitely good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, 3rd channel, body language. This covers gestures, posture, general movements.
And this is where we often mess up, right? We see someone fidgeting, touching their face, rubbing their hands, and we think, they're nervous, maybe lying.
Right, but often it just signals general emotional arousal. Could be excitement, could be anxiety, could be anything. It's not a reliable lie detector test on its own.
We also need to be aware of emblems here, too, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Emblems are those gestures with very specific meanings, like the OK sign or a thumbs up. But those meanings can be wildly different across cultures.
So definitely something to watch out for when traveling. Don't want to accidentally insult someone.
For sure. 4th channel is touching. This one is super context dependent. Who is touching whom, where, in what situation. It all changes the meaning.
The handshake is a good example, though. It's pretty common globally.
And studies show things like firmness, duration. They actually correlate with how people rate your personality. Firmer, longer handshakes tend to get higher ratings for extroversion and openness.
Huh. And wasn't there that weird study about, like, a pat on the arm?
Oh, yeah. The Levav and Argos study found that a light, comforting pat, specifically from a woman, interestingly, could make people feel more secure and even take bigger risks in, like, financial decisions afterward.
Wow. That's subtle influence.
It really is. Okay, 5th and final channel, paralanguage.
This is everything about the voice except the actual words.
Exactly. Pitch, tone, volume, rhythm, size, gasps, all those vocal effects. And the research is pretty clear. How something is said often tells you more about the speaker's true feelings than what is said.
Which connects neatly to this really cool idea, the facial feedback hypothesis.
Ah, yes. This one flips the script a bit. It's not just that feeling happy makes you smile.
But that the physical act of smiling can actually feedback and make you feel happier Or at least influence the emotion.
Precisely. It suggests it's a two-way street. The expression can intensify, maybe even trigger the internal feeling.
So there's that Botox study, right,
Yeah.
that supports this.
Yeah, the Davis study. They had people watch emotional videos. Those who had Botox, which paralyzes some facial muscles, limiting expression, reported weaker emotional reactions, both positive and negative, compared to a control group.
So less physical feedback from the face muscles actually dampened the emotional experience inside? Wild.
It really is. Now let's bring this back to detecting deception, because despite all these cues...
We're surprisingly bad at it. Like, barely better than flipping a coin.
It's true.
Yeah.
And we make common mistakes. We tend to focus on the wrong things, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, which, as we said, aren't actually very reliable signs of lying.
And we also just tend to assume people are telling the truth most of the time, like a truthfulness bias.
Exactly. So what should we look for? The valid cues are often subtle and easy to miss. Things like microexpressions.
Those super fast, fleeting facial expressions, like fractions of a second.
Yep. They flash the real emotion before the person can control it. Also, interchannel discrepancies.
Meaning, like, a mismatch between different channels.
Right. Someone might have a smiling face, but their body language is really tense and rigid. Or their voice pitch goes way up when they're trying to sound calm. That mismatch is a potential red flag.
Okay, this is fascinating. There was also something about mood affecting lie detection.
Yeah, Reinhardt and Schwartz found that people in a sad mood were actually better at detecting deception.
Better? Why? That seems counterintuitive.
The idea is that when you're feeling down, you tend to process information more carefully, more systematically. You pay closer attention to the actual content of the message, not just the flashy, superficial, nonverbal stuff.
Huh. So being a bit bummed makes you a more critical thinker, in a way. Interesting.
Okay, so we've gathered all this nonverbal data. Now comes the hard part, figuring out why. This is attribution.
Trying to understand the causes behind people's actions. Like, why did my friend turn down that date invitation? Was it something about them or something about the person who asked?
Exactly. Knowing the cause helps us make sense of the world and predict future behavior. So the first big theory here is Jones and Davis's correspondent inference theory.
Correspondent inference.
Yeah.
So when do we infer that someone's action corresponds directly to, like, a stable part of their personality, a lasting trait?
Right. When do we jump from they did X to they are an X kind of person? The theory says we're more likely to do this under three conditions.
Okay, what's the first one?
The behavior has to be freely chosen. If someone was forced or pressured, their action tells us very little about their actual disposition.
Makes sense. You can't judge someone's generosity if they were ordered to donate money. What's next?
The behavior should have non-common effects. This is a bit trickier. It means the choice they made leads to outcomes that other choices wouldn't have produced. It helps rule out alternative explanations.
Can we use the example from the source, the marriage one?
Yeah, that's a good one. If your friend marries someone who is kind, rich, successful, good-looking, well, there are lots of common, desirable reasons for that choice. You don't learn much specific about your friend's priorities.
But if they marry someone who's maybe really attractive, but also known to be disrespectful and deep in debt.
Exactly. Now, you have a non-common effect. The attractiveness seems to outweigh major downsides. You can make a stronger inference that physical attractiveness is a really high priority for your friend, specifically.
Got it. And the third condition?
The behavior should be low in social desirability. Basically, if someone does something unexpected, something that goes against the norm.
It tells you more about their individual traits than if they just did what everyone else does.
Precisely. Conforming doesn't reveal much, but breaking norms often does.
Okay, so that's Jones and Davis. What's the other major theory?
Kelly's covariation theory. This one is a bit more systematic, almost like we're intuitive scientists trying to figure out if the cause of behavior is internal, something about the person, or external, something about the situation or the thing you're reacting to.
Covariation, like how things vary together.
Exactly. Kelly says we, often unconsciously, look at three kinds of information. First, consensus.
Do other people act the same way in this situation or towards this stimulus?
Right. If consensus is high, everyone laughs at the comedian. We tend to think the cause is external, the comedian is funny. If consensus is low, only your friend laughs, we lean towards an internal cause. Your friend has an unusual sense of humor.
Okay, consensus. What else?
Second, consistency. Does this person always act this way in this situation or towards this stimulus over time?
So does my friend always laugh at this comedian every time they see them?
Yep. High consistency strengthens the attribution, whether it ends up being internal or external. Low consistency makes it harder to draw a firm conclusion. Maybe it was just a fluke.
And the third piece,
Distinctiveness. Does this person act the same way towards other different stimuli?
so does my friend laugh like this at all comedians or only this specific one?
Exactly. If distinctiveness is high, they only laugh this comedian, that points towards an external cause. Again, there's something special about this comedian. If distinctiveness is low, they laugh at everyone, it points towards an internal cause. They just laugh easily.
So you kind of weigh these three: consensus, consistency, distinctiveness to figure out internal versus external.
That's the model. High consensus, high consistency, and high distinctiveness usually leads to an external attribution. Low consensus, high consistency, and low distinctiveness point strongly to an internal one.
It sounds logical, but we don't always do this perfectly, do we? We make mistakes.
Oh, constantly. Which leads us to attribution errors and biases. The absolute classic is the correspondence bias.
Which is also famously known as the fundamental attribution error, or FAE.
Right, and it's fundamental because it's so common. It's our huge tendency to explain other people's behavior based on their internal dispositions, their personality, their traits, while massively underestimating the power of the situation, the external factors.
That classic example. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and your immediate thought is, what a jerk. Internal disposition, not maybe they're rushing to the hospital, external situation.
Exactly. Or the person who trips we think clumsy, not slippery floor.
And that Jones and Harris study really showed how strong this bias is.
Yeah, the Castro essay study. People read essays that were either pro-Castro or anti-Castro, even when they were explicitly told the writer had been assigned the position, forced to write it.
They still believed the essay reflected the writer's true, genuine attitude. They just couldn't discount the behavior enough, even knowing the situational pressure.
It's a powerful bias. But importantly, it's not the same everywhere.
Right. Culture plays a role. It's much stronger in Western individualistic cultures like the US or Europe.
Yep. In more collectivistic cultures, like many in Asia, people are generally more attuned to situational factors and social context, so they show the FAE less strongly. They're more likely to consider external explanations first.
Okay, what other biases should we know?
Well, there's the actor-observer effect.
Yeah.
This is sort of an extension of the FAE, but it highlights the difference in how we explain our own behavior versus others.
So when I slip on the ice, it's because the ice was slippery, external, situational. But when someone else slips, it's because they're clumsy, internal, dispositional.
Exactly. As the actor, we're aware of the situational forces acting on us. As observers of others, we focus more on the person.
And then there's the one that protects our ego, the self-serving bias.
Ah, yes. This is our tendency to take credit for our successes, but blame external factors for our failures.
I got an A because I'm smart, internal attribution for success. I failed the test because the questions were unfair, external attribution for failure.
Precisely. It helps maintain self-esteem. But when this gets really exaggerated, when someone develops these incredibly inflated positive views of themselves and their own abilities.
That's called hubris, right? Often seen in people who become very powerful or successful.
Yeah, it can be a dangerous side effect of success, sometimes losing touch with reality, because you only attribute good things to yourself and bad things to the world.
Okay, so we've got the nonverbal cues. We've made some attributions about why people act. Now, how do we actually combine all that information into a coherent overall impression of someone?
This takes us back to some foundational research by Solomon Asch in the 1940s. He applied Gestalt psychology principles.
The idea that the whole is often greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. Asch argued that we don't just add up individual traits we perceive in someone. We form an integrated overall impression where the traits influence each other.
And he showed this with his famous central traits experiment, didn't he?
He did. He gave people lists of adjectives describing a hypothetical person. The lists were identical except for one word. In one list, it was warm, and in the other, it was cold.
And just changing that one word
Completely changed the overall impression participants formed. People who read the warm list described the person as also being generous, happy, good-natured. Those who read the cold list saw the same other traits much more negatively.
So warm and cold acted as central traits, organizing the whole perception. But other traits didn't have that effect.
Right. When he swapped out words like polite versus blunt, it didn't have nearly the same impact on the overall impression. Some traits just carry more weight in shaping the whole picture.
And the speed at which we form these initial impressions is kind of scary.
It's incredibly fast. We're talking about forming impressions based on thin slices of behavior, tiny amounts of information.
Like that Willis and Todorov study, where judgments made in just a tenth of a second.
Correlated highly with judgments made with no time limit. Ratings of things like trustworthiness, competence, aggressiveness formed almost instantly.
Wow. And judgments about threat are even faster.
Yeah, some research suggests we can make a threat assessment in as little as 39 milliseconds, which makes evolutionary sense, right? You need to quickly know if something is dangerous.
Okay, but if we form these impressions so fast, and maybe based on flimsy evidence or a central trait that might be misleading, can we change them? Are first impressions set in stone?
Good question. The good news is, yes, they can be changed. But it often requires specific kinds of new information. One powerful way is through reinterpretation of the initial information.
Reinterpretation, how does that work?
Think about the man in Ferguson example.
Yeah.
You first hear that someone named Francis was seen breaking into houses.
Yeah,
Negative impression, right? Vandalism, theft.
definitely.
But then you learn he was breaking into those houses because they were on fire, and he was rescuing trapped children.
Oh, okay, yeah, that completely reframes the initial action. Now it's heroic.
Exactly. The initial behavior, breaking in, is reinterpreted in light of the new, highly relevant information, saving lives. That's how impressions can dramatically shift. It works best when the new info directly explains or changes the meaning of the old info.
That makes sense. So, knowing that other people are constantly doing this, forming impressions of us, we naturally try to manage how we come across.
Absolutely. Which brings us to impression management, or sometimes called self-presentation. It's all the stuff we do to try and make a good impression on others.
And there are different tactics we use.
Broadly, they fall into two categories. First, self-enhancement.
This is trying to boost our own appeal, right? Like dressing well for an interview, maybe highlighting our accomplishments.
Yep, improving physical appearance, talking up your skills or experience. It's about making yourself look good.
And the second category.
Other enhancement. This focuses on the other person.
So flattery, agreeing with them, doing favors, maybe asking for their advice to show you respect their opinion.
Exactly. Making the other person feel good, which hopefully makes them like you more.
And these tactics generally work, right?
They do, up to a point. But there's a really important warning here. The backfire effect.
Meaning, if you overdo it or seem insincere...
It totally backfires. If your flattery is just too obvious, or if you get caught lying about your qualifications, a form of self-enhancement, people see right through it.
And instead of liking you more, they'll probably like you a lot less. They feel manipulated.
Precisely. So impression management is effective, but it requires a delicate touch. Too much or the wrong kind, and you end up worse off than if you'd done nothing.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot. From those tiny nonverbal leaks,
Through the mental gymnastics of attribution, figuring out why.
all the way to forming these rapid, integrated impressions and trying to manage the impressions others form of us.
Yeah, I think the really big takeaway, especially thinking about biases like the fundamental attribution error, is just how important it is to be mindful, to be vigilant. Our brains default to quick judgments and often internal explanations for others' behavior.
We really need to consciously push ourselves to look for that situational information, the consensus, the distinctiveness before we jump to conclusions about someone's character. Slow down that process.
Definitely. And knowing that even our own mood can affect how well we spot deception, or that our attempts to look good can blow up in our faces. It makes you think.
It really does. So here's something to chew on. Given how automatic these processes are, how could you, in your daily interactions, actively try to gather more of that external situational context before you settle on your first impression of someone or why they did something? How can you build in checks against your own biases? #tag key terms discussed, social perception, nonverbal communication, facial feedback hypothesis, microexpressions, interchannel discrepancies, paralanguage, attribution, correspondent inference theory, Jones and Davis, non-common effects, covariation theory, Kelly, consensus, consistency, distinctiveness, correspondence bias, fundamental attribution error, FAE, actor-observer effect, self-serving bias, hubris, impression formation, ASH, central traits, impression management, self-presentation, self-enhancement, other enhancement.